And hello, friends. We welcome you to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm your host, Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. We are pleased to be joined today by author Mark Breeding as we're talking to him today about his latest book, Abbey Girl, Shepherd with a Big Heart, and Other True Stories. And Mark Breeding, born in Huntington, West Virginia, he and his two sisters were raised in rural southern Ohio on their grandparents' farm. He's the son of a 92-year-old Baptist preacher. He's worked several jobs in a variety of industries during the recession years in the 1970s and the 1980s in Appalachia. Those varied jobs included laboring in a factory as a welder to managing restaurants, but he's also been a police officer for 5 years in the early 1990s. And then finally, he found his niche in real estate 26 years ago, and he holds licenses in appraising, auctioneering, and in real estate. And Mark resides with his wife Sonia in Ashland, Kentucky, and in his spare time he enjoys building homes, writing short stories, and painting. And we're talking to him today about his latest book. So Mark, good to have you here on Chapters. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Appreciate it.
Good to have you here. And I wanted to start first with a quote that's on the back of your book, because I think this really sets up kind of the whole structure of your story as we think about Abbey Girl and Other Stories. And on the back, right at the top there on the back cover, it says, "Abbey," I screamed. "Abbey, dear God," I prayed. "Please help me find her. Please don't let the coyotes kill her, please." I think that really kind of gives us a window into what's going on in your story. So tell us a little bit about that quote and what was happening in that particular story. You know, who was Abbey and what had happened to her in this particular instance?
Well, Abbey, of course, was my almost 11-year-old German Shepherd when I lost her. She almost made it to 11, but she disappeared on us one Sunday afternoon, and she wasn't in the fenced backyard when we came home. So when this incident happened, this instance here, I was in the throes of a little panic and wondering what could possibly happen to her. And it just hadn't sunk in yet that where she was, what might have happened. So the only thing I could think of when she turned up missing was to go to the adjacent farm to our subdivision development and look for her there, because there's a lot of acreage there. I thought maybe she escaped somehow through the fence to that farm. And we went down there. It was a big storm brewing up. The sky was black. Went down there and knocked on the door, and the gentleman is a pastor of a local church there. And he said, "Here, take my four-wheeler, go back on the hill. I'll send my dog with you." Jake, I believe his name was. But we climb on it. The dog follows me back on the hill. No sooner than we crest the top of the pasture, this huge storm broke out. I mean, lightning, the rain was coming down in just sheets, and I was soaking wet. My clothes were soaking wet. The dog was soaking wet. Dog headed off the hill, before I did. He turned around and looked back like to say, "Sorry, but I'm getting out of here." So I thought maybe the coyotes may have got her by that point, because we have a coyote problem out there in a rural area. And I know the farmer there, the pastor, said he had lost, I think it was 70-some sheep to coyotes. He's a sheep farmer. And one thing he said before I left to go back on the hill, he goes, "Well, if they find her," he said, "there won't be anything left." So, of course, later we found her dead the next day. A friend of mine found her on the interstate, in the interstate median the next day, and it's still a mystery as to what happened. She may have fell off the cliff because she was having hip problems. She had the heart problem she was born with. And again, the story is about trying to bring light to the hereditary problem she was born with, that we found out later from her vet that she had tricuspid valve dysplasia, and she wasn't expected to live past about 2 years old. So we gave her medicine every day, limited her exercise, and she lived with this problem. In the book is an x-ray picture of her heart, how big it was, twice the size of what it should have been. And but she turned out to be a great dog, and we had her all those years, and we think that she was trying to get away to die. Her heart was failing. She managed to get under a spot about that high, a rabbit under a fence, big German Shepherd. She would have never tried it. before, so something was going on with her when she disappeared and went over the cliff to the interstate. Don't think she was hit by a car, because she was intact. Had a little bit of blood on her teeth when we found her, but anyway, that's the main story in the book. Of course, I've got other short stories in there, several of them, but that's the main story, the first story in the book, and the longest story is about her, as a tribute to her.
And I can tell in reading that story, just hearing you talk about her, the special connection that you had with Abby. And I wanted to ask you, for people who don't have dogs or maybe don't have pets, what is it about the connection between humans and dogs, in your opinion, that is so special and so permanent and is so difficult to get over? I don't want to say get over, but so difficult to overcome as the adult when something happens to that dog. It just, there seems to be a special kind of connection there. Do you have any thoughts on that, about why that bond is so strong?
I put an afterword in at the end of the story, that addresses that subject a little bit. I think the one thing that I learned from her, and I've probably heard before, we hear a lot of things, and we hear them, but maybe they don't go into here always. But what I learned from her was her unquestionable, never-ending love for me, totally unconditional love and loyalty that exceeds that of human beings. I think the gift that she had in that area far exceeds mine as a human. They talk about the dog's sense of smell and how gifted they are, and they use the German Shepherd in drug searches and different things. So we know they excel us in those type of gifts, and I really do think they excel us in loyalty and in the ability to unconditionally love. And once you've had that experience with a dog for those many years, as many people know that's had a pet and then had them to die, it's an amazing experience, and they truly are like a family member when you finally lose them, and it's a tough situation.
Yeah, and one of the things that we were talking before we started taping. I have pets now. I've grown up around animals my whole life, and one of the interesting things about them is they learn your routines.
Yes, they do.
And they learn, when you get up and what your morning routine is, what your evening routine is, and you do take for granted that they're always there after a certain period of time.
Exactly.
And then when they're gone, you realize, oh, wait a minute, my new morning or evening routine has changed because I'm missing someone who always was with me.
It's a void, just like losing a mate or another loved one. It's a void. It's difficult to get used to because she was always there on the back porch. If I came in late at night, I let her in, and same routine. She was there with her ears laid back, just so glad to see me, waiting for her food and her water, and it's a thing you got to get used to,
And I understand you have not adopted or taken in another dog since Abby's death, right?
No. Now I have my wife's cat. We've been married a couple of years now, and she has a cat, Cheyenne, and I never was a cat lover, but this cat sort of won me over. I just at this point, and since she's been dead now, I don't know, going on 2 years, I guess. But I just didn't want anybody to kind of take her place for a while, and plus she was, they're a big responsibility.
Yeah.
At my age, I think I'm ready to travel a little bit and not do it again. Not saying I won't get another dog, but right now I have no plans to.
Okay, very good. And I know, as you mentioned, there's some other stories in your collection here in addition to the story about Abigail. And I wanted to ask you about one story in particular, Angel in Black Boots, which is a story I really liked. And I just wanted to mention a couple of things that you write about here. And you talk about, in the second paragraph there on page 94, the jailer reminded me the city would be sending me for an HIV test due to my contact with prisoners' body fluids. I'd received a series of vaccinations for hepatitis B 5 years earlier. It seems the most preferred method of revenge from a restrained prisoner is to spit on an officer's face. And I was reading all of that, and you took us right kind of into your experience. So you worked in law enforcement for about 5 years. How did you get into that as one of your jobs and careers, and then what made you decide to get out of law enforcement?
Well, I'd been in restaurant management for on and off from being laid off at plants. I'd worked for the railroad, and so I sort of fell back on restaurant management, and then I had my own pizza place for a while. But I saw the ad to apply, and I'd had a little bit of law enforcement experience previously when I was 19 or 20 with Lawrence County Sheriff Deputy. I was special deputy there. It didn't last long, but so I actually applied and to the city commission, and they hired me. So I really enjoyed the job for a good while, but eventually you get kind of burnt out with it. And I worked a lot of midnights, and then you have something like this happen, and you do get spit on. We're living in a day. This was 20-some years ago when I policed, and we're living in a day now that's sad. I've seen a lot of respect lost for the police throughout America, and just as some respect's been lost, there's a big movement to support them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they get spit on quite frequently, and not only that, I mean, we had to wrestle him down. He was high on cocaine, and he literally gave us, resisted arrest. It took 3 of us to, and so there was a little bloodshed here and there from the altercation and trying to get him under control. So we had that on our hands, mm-hmm. and plus the spit. So, but no AIDS.
Good. That's good. Absolutely.
Just clarify that.
That's good. Excellent. And there's a picture of an officer here, Deputy Sheriff Jay Johnson, in this story, Angel in Black Boots, receiving the Kentucky State Highway Safety Award, and he got that in August of 2018. So who was Jay Johnson, and how was he kind of involved in your story?
He was a deputy sheriff and still is back in that day. And there was 2 of us that had this individual on the ground, and he'd been doing some time. He was ex-con, and he'd also, I think, there was a warrant for him for stabbing his wife. But we really had a hard time with him, getting him arrested. And I remember I was on the ground. It was pouring the rain too, and everybody was soaked. And I remember trying to get his arm out from underneath him so I could get one cuff on it. And Deputy Johnson, I don't know how tall he is. He's probably over 6 feet, well over 6 feet, and he's a big guy. I just remember seeing a big black boot come down on the side of the guy's head and neck, and the weight go down on him to get him under control. And so that picture of that boot, that foot, coming to the rescue, it's never left me. So.
Excellent. Very good. Something else that occurs in your collection, too, is we even have some poetry, and I want to ask you about one in particular that comes prior to the story we've just been talking about. A couple stories before. The Long Road is kind of sandwiched in between The Long Road by Eastwood, but this poem called The Path. And you open it up talking about your childhood and kind of it was a good thing, and you had basketball and bikes and your old transistor radio, but the end of the first stanza says, "The most cherished thing of all was a place called The Path." So what was that path, and why is that, and was that so special to you?
Well, as a small boy, we lived down off the hill on the level. And a neighbor lived right across the street up on the hill. And Don Joseph was his name, and then his sisters were all there, all neighborhood girls we grew up with, Sue, Teresa, Ellie. And then there was a path running from his house over to Mark and Scott and Cleve Mills, which were also neighborhood friends, all of us kids. So they had worn that down through the woods, and it was on a shelf like bench through the woods, that was our play area. and it just became known as the path. We rode our bikes in it. We built fires in it. As we got a little older, kids, we experimented with cigarettes in it. You know, it was our place to play our transistor radios and sing to the music and hang out. And later we pitched a tent there and started camping out when we got a little older. But from toddler, almost not much more than toddler age, you know, we played in that path.
And I love how you end that poem too, because you say the weeds are grown back up, but the memories live on.
That's right.
And so even today, you still have fond memories and can recall who was there and what you did and how special that was.
Yep. Yeah.
So I want to ask you about your collection here. How did you decide to put all of this together? Are these different pieces like the path and the long road to Eastwood and the other stories that we see in this collection? Had you been working on these kind of separately and decided to pull them into a collection, or how did you determine what was going to go into this book?
Pretty much. Some of the poetry I had written several years back. The path has been written for quite a while. When I decided that I wanted to start writing about Abby, I started the book before she passed, but I knew it wouldn't have her much longer, but she was having different health problems. And so I started writing it while she was alive, and I finished it, of course, after she passed. So I knew I wanted to make the book about her. So during that process, I decided to write a book of short stories, and I took a class to help me write the book, better understand writing in the book locally with John Patrick Grace. And matter of fact, I went through his class twice. And he gave some suggestions and things. So decided to write a book of true stories, Abby being the main focus. So that's how that sort of came about.
So how long did it take you then to write all the different stories and then kind of put them together? It sounds like you had some already put together.
Not as long as maybe a lot of people might think. You know, you're a writer. Once you get in that gear and it starts coming, I did a lot of writing for maybe 2 hours at night. Every night I would be writing. I would say I did a whole lot of this within 6 months. Mm-hmm. And now the editing and back and forth and deciding what to do, what or change up, then we get into a lot of stuff there back and forth. But writing the main body of the book and putting it together, the majority of it, Abbey Girl and a few of the other stories that wasn't already written, I'd say 6 to 8 months would knock that in the head, pretty much.
Very good. And who are some writers that you like, and what do you like to read?
I tell you, I was influenced a lot. I was pretty much a juvenile delinquent as a teenager. I gave my parents fits. You mentioned, my dad was a minister and grew up around the church and things. But I was pretty rebellious. But at 19, I became a Christian, and a lot of ups and downs since then too. But I started doing a lot of reading, studying, about the Bible in that day, and there was a lot of good old writers and a lot of ministers that had written sermons and theology and books back in the 1800s, and I got hooked on that stuff at an early age. And Charles Spurgeon is a writer that greatly influenced by him. He had such a way with words far exceeding anything I could do. A lot of the old English writers, even Martin Luther and John Knox, several. That was my early inspiration, I think, that got me into actually reading and helped sort of give direction to my life and things at that point.
So I wanted to go back and ask you about another story in your collection, because it ties into a business that people from this region are familiar with. And the title of the story is Mr. Pizza and the Piano Man, which I love. And it kind of ties into a business that people from this area or passing through West Virginia and Huntington area are familiar with, and that is Gino's Pizza Restaurants. And so this story talks a little bit about Kenny Grant, and so tell us a little bit about what's going on in that story, because there's a lot of really interesting nuggets and historical moments that take place in that story.
Right, and one of my best friends and comrades is Dick Lucas. He's my cousin, and he was the piano player at the pub back in the day when I was a teenager, and the pub was going big time. He was a piano player there. Dick wore a vest and all, and he's a gifted player even today. He's got these pianos, grand pianos and stuff in his house, and him and Kenny have remained friends over the years, ever since those years of the pub. So Tuesday nights at Gino's here at the 9th Avenue location or 10th Street, they have a 2 for Tuesday special. Kenny's usually there if he's not in Florida, and Dick's there, and so three of us started hanging out there, and I thought this was along about the time that I was writing Abbey Girl and thinking about doing the short story thing. So I thought, hey, I'm gonna, with these guys' permission, I'm gonna write their how they got to know each other, how Gino's got started, and about their relationship, and also, yeah, they said it was okay. So, matter of fact, Kenny and Dick were here at the bookstore during one of my signings. They came over, but they're both a hoot. They're a lot of fun. They're great men, and their longevity and loyalty, to each other and to me. I mean, I feel, like they let me come in the pack every now and then, to sit with them and talk with them. But so many stories they tell are funny, and just the history of Kenny and Gino's is just amazing. I think he's just a local legend here in Huntington, and Dick too. Great friends, great guys.
And what was interesting to me, and I don't know if this was part of the layout and design of the book, but on the page before Mr. Pete's and the Piano Man is your color photo of Abby's grave.
Right.
And then we get into Mr. Pete's and the Piano Man, and to hear you talk about how some of that story deals with friendship and loyalty.
Right.
When I read that and I looked back at that picture, I thought, wow, there's a lot of symmetry there, because Abby gave you that same kind of friendship and loyalty.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I read that and I thought, I didn't know if that was intentional or not, but that I made that connection, that you had the four-legged friendship and loyalty, and then the friendship with Dick and Kenny, which was really great. So,
thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
I want to ask you, Mark, for someone who's maybe taking a class or thinking about taking a writing class, as you did with Patrick Grace's life writing class, or is working on some stories, or thinking maybe I've got a story to tell, but I don't know if I can do it, what advice would you give to them about writing, or about putting something like this together, a collection of stories and sort of multi-genre work?
Right.
What advice would you give someone who's kind of thinking about it, or maybe in the early stages of putting something together?
I think someone has to really have the want to do this, because even in the 2 classes I attended and over the months, some people started and they were excited, and then probably more didn't end up writing or finishing their book than did. But I think the class is helpful because it gets you in a setting with people that want to do the same thing you are, and you can bounce things off each other, and Patrick's got a lot of experience, and he's got some insight and some ideas, and it's a good help to go to the class. I had just made up my mind that I was going to do this, and so I did it, but not to boast or anything, but that's kind of the way I am. I make up my mind and set a goal. I want to finish it. I want to do it, and not that it's any great thing, but I did enjoy the class, and I think everybody I met there I liked, and I think it's helpful to have those peers around you.
Absolutely, very good. So, final question to you, Mark, as we finish up with you today. If anybody wants to get in contact with you to talk to you about writing or about your book, or to get a copy of Abbey Girl, first of all, how can they get in contact with you, and where can they get copies of your book?
Okay, they can get in contact with me by emailing me at markwbreeding@gmail.com. And then Abbey Girl is on Amazon, so it's easily, you can order it right from Amazon. It's $14. They're going to charge you some shipping on that, I know, but I would go to Amazon. If they want to buy from me direct and save the shipping, sure, I can do that too. I'm local here. anybody that locally that wants it, and I'll ship it out too if they want to contact me direct.
Great, fantastic.
Yeah.
Mark Breeding has been our guest here today on Chapters. We've been talking to him about his latest book, Abbey Girl, Shepherd with a Big Heart, and Other True Stories, a fascinating collection about a very special relationship that Mark had with his German Shepherd, Abbey, but so much more about relationships and friendships and life and sort of overcoming difficult circumstances, either things we go through as an individual or things kind of thrust upon us by other people. So, Mark, it's a great collection. Congratulations
Thank you.
on that. And as you keep writing and keep publishing, we'll have you back on Chapters
Hey,
to talk about
thanks.
it. So,
Appreciate it.
thank you
man.
so much.
Thank you.
We also want to take a moment to say thanks to the staff and management of the Inner Geek here at Pullman Square for providing our on-site support and assistance. We encourage you to come down to the Inner Geek and inquire about Mark Breeding's book. And we also want to remind you that many of the other author, editor, and publisher interviews we've had featured here on our program, their works are for sale right here at the Inner Geek. So come on down to Pullman Square and get whatever reading taste you need satisfied right here at the Inner Geek. And we appreciate their sponsorship each and every episode here on Chapters. And if you are a social media user or an email user, we have made a variety of ways available to you and for you to stay in contact with the program. We have an email address that you can reach out to us at any time, and that email address is right here at the bottom of the screen. We do ask that you please include your name and the town or community in which you're writing from so that we can track that correspondence. If you're a YouTube viewer, we have a Chapters page through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube, and that address is also here at the bottom of the screen. When you punch that into your search browser, look for the Chapters tab, and we've got all of our author, editor, and publisher interviews archived for you there as well. And if you like to view content on Facebook, we also have a Facebook page, and that address is here at the bottom of the screen. And what we have on our Facebook page is our more recent author, editor, and publisher interviews there. You can share those interviews. You can like and comment with viewers of the program, and we know many of you have done that through our Facebook page. We appreciate that so very much. So if you like email, you like YouTube, and you like Facebook, or a combination of one of those, or two or three of those, whatever you like to use in terms of staying up to date with what we're doing here on Chapters, we've made that possible to you through the internet and through social media. So we appreciate all the folks that do interact and keep in contact and share and comment on the content that you see right here on the program. We appreciate that so very much. And that will do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time, and in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.